And then eventually, because it's technical, IT has to get involved.
Yeah.
But now you've done it behind their back.
Now it's too
And
late.
right. And now they're gonna either messing something up, or they're gonna block you out of spite, or or
Yeah.
a number of other things are gonna happen because you weren't good partners in saying what was the right foundation and framework that works for everyone.
Or they have wild success and they look at IT and say, "See, I told you so."
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
All right. Welcome back to Exploring Growth and to our CEO series where I'm interviewing CEOs around Central Florida area. Today, we're talking about the customer experience as a means for growth. So I have the pleasure of talking with Shamir Duverseau, who is a CEO of Smart Panda Labs here in Central Florida. Welcome to the podcast, Shamir.
Thank you so much for having me, Lee. Excited.
Yeah, me too. As I was looking at your company, I really like that you are focused on solving for the customer's experience as they click through a brand's lead gen workflow. And that's just one way to describe it, I guess. But, talking to a lot of marketing leaders here listening, they know about workflows and lead gen and demand gen and all these things. So to put it in their terms, I think that what sparked an interest for me and why I brought you on is like, this can often be an afterthought, I think, for a lot of companies and brands. And maybe even if it's not an afterthought, it's just not there's not enough intentionality put behind that journey. And then the company kind of ends up with sort of lackluster results, which leads to marketing teams thinking that, hey, we need a new strategy, and I'm a strategy guy. So like, I'm never going to tell somebody to not think about strategy. But I think this is one of those times where they could actually go down the wrong path thinking that they need to retool their strategy completely when there's just really a lot of conversion optimization that could be had around the experience that can make things a lot better. Instead of throwing the proverbial baby out with the bathwater, taking a look at their customer journey, customer experience is a good thing. So I'm excited to chat with you today, and how you do this for your customers and to give our audience some wisdom around customer experience. Before we jump into our conversation, tell everybody about what is Smart Panda Labs, what are you all about, and who do you work with?
Yeah, so we're a digital experience agency. We've been around for about 14 years now. So we focus, as you kind of mentioned, on the post-click experience. So what happens on the internet after someone clicks on the ad, and how do you use that experience to drive revenue, to drive profitability, to drive lifetime value for the organization? Mm-hmm. We do that for mid-market and enterprise organizations, mostly direct-to-consumer organizations. So we've been doing this now, focused on that post-click experience for the past few years. We used to do broader services across digital media and SEO and things like that, but we decided we really wanted to focus on that post-click experience just because we didn't feel like it was getting enough love. So we figured, let's do it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So let's start kind of high level. Mm-hmm. Why does the experience of the customer matter so much?
When you think about it, everything you kind of do is really around the experience you get. One example I always give to people is, I like fast food as much as the next guy does. But you go to a place like a Chick-fil-A, and the kind of experience you have there is a lot different than the experience that you have, I'll just say, for the sake of protecting other brands, other fast food restaurants.
Yes, right.
And it's not because the food is that much better. I mean, you could argue it is, but really it's because you get quick service. The line could be around the building twice, and yet you still know it's going to move quickly, just because the people there know what they're doing, and they just give you a positive experience. And that releases so much tension and friction and doubt and fear in the whole experience that it makes you want to go back because you trust it.
Yes.
And that's why the customer experience is so important. You could say it's all about the product or it's all about the price, and those things definitely play a large role. But to underestimate the role the experience plays is really to sell yourself short, because it adds up. That friction and that anxiety really does add up, and it pushes people in the wrong direction.
I love that you use Chick-fil-A as an example. I use them all the time. And personally, my experience has been that I've never had a better lesson in etiquette than going through the doors at a Chick-fil-A, because it seems like, and it's so in front of my face now, I can't not see it, but every time I go into the restaurant physically,
Mm-hmm.
I am reminded about that there are people out there, and I don't know if it just exists in that one microcosm or not, but that people do know how to say please and thank you, and they do know how to hold a door and let someone else or wait for you to get there. It's a crazy thing because a lot of the experience I'm having is with the team members themselves because they're
Mm-hmm.
they're carrying food out in and out and they're
Right.
holding the door. But I see it replicated immediately with customers that are doing it for the team member or vice versa. And it's just such a pleasant experience to walk through those doors and feel like, oh man, the door is being held for me, or I got to hold it for someone else, and I haven't even gotten to into the restaurant yet. I think it's a perfect example.
Yeah, when we happen to go to some other fast food and just the chaos ensues in the drive-through lane or having to
Yep.
go inside, I often turn to my wife and say, this is just uncivilized. Like
Yeah.
this isn't the way things are meant to be, So
No, it's so true. That's the best way to describe it. Yeah, and from a business metric standpoint, I think Chick-fil-A is killing it. I
yeah.
think their numbers are more than all the other ones combined. I think if I read that right recently, which just and they're not even open on Sundays.
Hmm.
So to the nature of experience, you're right on.
Exactly.
Um, you know, I think that experience is paramount today. It's one of the most critical things we can think about as marketers and as business growth leaders, because people, and I've said this on lots of my recent podcasts, because we're talking a lot about brand and culture and those kind of things, but people want to feel connected to the thing that they're doing, and
Hmm.
so that experience is very important for them to feel like it's maybe not, it doesn't have to be hyper personalized. I think it depends on what medium or format or you know platform they're on, but they need to feel like it's making sense, more and more sense to them.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I think people today and the generations that exist in the digital age have so much more influence and control over their interaction with brands and the
Mm-hmm.
services and products those brands offer than they did a generation ago, that it's really caused
Right.
this dramatic shift, right? So when we were younger, when our parents were, our age, so the brand had so much control. You had to go to the department store. You went into your local Sears or whatever it was. You trusted explicitly what that salesperson told you about what
Mm-hmm.
was the better model, and if this is a good price or not,
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't really have a basis to explore that yourself, to research it yourself, to understand and compare prices. What little bit of comparison you had took a lot of hassle because you have to go to a whole another store and have a whole another
Mm-hmm.
experience somewhere else. So you just kind of took it for granted and you kind of said, okay, I like this place. This is close. Like, this is what you're telling me. That's great, right?
Yeah.
Well, the internet has completely blown that apart because
Mm-hmm.
now all I have to do is go to Google or my favorite search engine, type in the product. I get all kinds of feedback, reviews. I get
Mm-hmm.
prices from, a dozen different retailers,
Mm-hmm.
places I can go to look at it, or, I can get videos or all kinds of things that just put me so much more in the driver's seat,
Mm-hmm.
that now it's like, okay, now what reason do I have to go to you versus go to you versus go to you? And
That's right.
again, some of that is going to be price, and that does play a factor in it.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter how much people have changed, people are always willing to pay a little bit more for a better experience. It's just
Mm-hmm.
consistently so, because the premise of you pay what you get what you pay for, or rather, it still holds consistent even a generation later. So
Right.
that experience that you deliver is oftentimes going to be the differentiator between whether or not I'm going to choose this path and this particular company to get this product or service, or I'm going to go down this other path.
Yeah, that's right. And so let's talk about how to improve that experience, right? So just take any, I don't know, maybe you can pick a brand or pick a type of company. They're put an ad out there. And of course, that has to be to some level of compelling and engaging to get people to click through.
Mhm.
Um, post ad, then talk about how you approach improving that process.
Yeah, it's like to start with an analogy, it's like going to a store, right? So you might see an ad for something, maybe a billboard or maybe even an online ad, and you decide you're going to go in the store because you want to buy this product, you want to buy this drill or this pair of shoes or whatever the case is. Well, the minute you walk through the doors, it's like, well, now I'm challenged because I have to find the product that I was looking for, right? So, how is the store organized? Are things clearly labeled? Are there people there to help me proactively to try and guide me and direct me to where it is? What aisle do I need to go to find this product? When I actually get there, is it for the price that was advertised? Does it have the features that I was told it was going to have? Right. So all
Hmm.
those different things that we do in a physical world, the same thing happens in the digital world. So
Hmm.
you have clicked on the ad as a consumer because something's been promised to you. A question
Sure.
is going to be answered. A feature has been displayed that you're interested in. So you're clicking it on that ad and you're expecting that promise to be delivered.
Hmm.
So I'm going to click on this ad for this product. I expect that when I get there, I'm going to find that product on that page. It's
Hmm.
going to answer the question that was posed in the ad. It's going to list the features that I was told it was going to have.
Hmm.
And as obvious and straightforward as that is,
Yeah.
oftentimes that's not the case. You're dropped on the homepage and left to figure it out. Or the ad talks about one thing, you get to the landing
Hmm.
page and it talks about something completely different. And now you've caused friction. Now it's like, okay, wait a second, this isn't what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it's one thing if you walk into the store and you've made the hassle to drive 30 minutes to get a parking space to go in there. You're going to
Hmm.
spend a few minutes kind of looking around trying to find it. You're getting frustrated, but the hassle of actually going somewhere else is big. On the
That's right.
internet, all I have to do is open up another tab or go back to the previous search and say, yep, go to the
Hmm.
next option. Like that's it, right?
Yeah.
So that idea of how do you deliver on that click and
Hmm.
how do you keep that momentum going to keep that
Hmm.
person going down that path, answering those questions that they need answered in order to ultimately go all the way down that funnel and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to transact. I'm going to pull up my credit card. I'm going to click confirm.
Yeah. Okay. So what I hear you saying is first setting the proper expectation
Mm-hmm.
and then removing any known or feedback given friction. Something comes to mind is an interview I saw with Mr. Beast a little while ago, talking about his success on YouTube, and they're asking like, what's the formula? What do we do? Like, tell us, and we'll just do it. Um, and he said it's actually pretty simple, and it's not just a YouTube thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very similar to what you just said. It's kind of an obvious thing where, but not so obvious to us as marketers when we start putting stuff together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we get in this different world where he said, okay, you create a thumbnail, and these thumbnails, there is a little bit of formula to how they're currently operating and what gets a click. But whatever expectation you set in that thumbnail, you need to follow through on that expectation within the first 5 seconds. So when they click it, if it says we're going to take 5 cars and dump them into this lake, and that's what got you hooked.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, when you click, he's standing there in front of the lake with the 5 cars, and he's saying, "We're going to take these 5 cars and send them in the lake." But and he puts starts to tell a story, puts a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of conflict, and that captures your attention before you know it. You've watched 3/4 of the video.
Right.
So I think here's somebody who's doing it on the highest level from storytelling standpoint
Mm-hmm.
and modern day technology, modern day marketing. And what you're saying for just average brands really should be following the same formula.
100%. And one of the beautiful things about the internet is it's so easy to gather feedback about people and what they're doing, right? So
Mhm.
from its most basic form of just having general web analytics, putting Google Analytics on a website
Mhm.
and measuring people's activity, to far more robust ways of gathering data, gathering online feedback via online polls or
Yep.
using tools that do session recordings or heat maps. There's ways to constantly do research and say, okay, well, let me get a view of what kind of experience people are
Mhm.
having and get a sense based on that research of where are they having issues, what
Yeah,
kinds of questions are they posing, why aren't they doing the things that I'm
that's
expecting
right.
them to do, and then taking that information and saying, okay, how do we create some ideas about how we solve these problems for
Mhm.
people, and then the ability to test that in real time and actually say, did that work, is
Mhm.
that actually solving problems for people? All of those things can really dramatically impact the business performance of any company who puts those things into practice, because
Mhm.
now you're getting the most out of all those dollars you're spending to
That's right.
drive people to your experience, and you're really maximizing that. So now it's not just about driving revenue, which is important, but it's about driving profit, right? It's about reducing
Yeah.
your costs, and saying, how do we get more out of the money that we're spending so you're getting a better return on that investment.
Yeah, so you need to find out where those points of friction are. So you need the right tools and maybe technology to help you do that. Going back to your analogy of the in-person kind of Sears model, um, and even today in person, savvy companies and brands that want to know how they can improve that experience, they're watching the flow of traffic in the store. They're seeing someone get there and kind of scratch their head as lost as to they're looking for something, they can't find it. So translate that to online. That's really sounds like what you're saying is you need to have the right tools with heat maps and Google Tag Manager and looking at things. Where are people getting hitting a hitch? Where are people getting stopped in their tracks, and why are they stopping? Why are they leaving this page? Why are they doing these things? That's critical. That's very critical for brands today to know. I think even just to start before you start running a campaign,
Yep.
before you put together more sophisticated workflow, is just seeing what are people looking at currently and what are they not doing.
Yeah, and I mean, the smart companies have a framework in place to keep doing that constantly, right? Because they're getting a constant influx of new people.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting out new products and services. Competitors are making changes. The market is changing. So you have to have a system where you're getting consistent feedback because all those changes are happening, and you have to be able to measure and adapt, measure and adapt, measure and
Yeah.
adapt to all those changes. So people are getting that framework in place to say, how are we constantly kind of making sure we're monitoring this and understanding how people are interacting so we can keep making those little tweaks and little adjustments that allow people to more easily accomplish what they want to accomplish and what we want them to accomplish, which is, of
Right.
course, doing business with us.
Okay. So let's say you're having a conversation with a VP marketing director. They're building a new campaign and they have Google Tag Manager in place, Google Analytics. They have some of the fundamental things in place and they are looking at some data, but they want to do something a little bit more sophisticated, and it's going to start with an ad and it's going to end with, I don't know, maybe that customer dumping into a nurture sequence or ending up on a newsletter, or maybe even a conversion potentially to a purchase. But they're going to launch this new thing. What kind of direction or advice would you give them to not step in any potholes right out of the gate? I mean, what would you tell them to consider before they launch that campaign?
I think the biggest thing is, what is the ultimate goal of the campaign, right? In terms of
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's for someone to buy, but
Mm-hmm.
is the campaign about market share? Is the campaign about upsell, cross sell? Is it about
Mm-hmm.
order value, right? So what is it you're trying to accomplish, and then make a connection between that and what the person needs in order to kind of meet that goal that you're trying to get them to accomplish.
Right.
So what's that connection? So in order for someone to make that decision, what would they need to know in that purchase cycle?
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of that's going to be, going to fall back on that person is, kind of best practice. But again, that's where a lot of that research comes into play of understanding who your customer is,
Mm-hmm.
understanding what their drivers are and their motivations, right? And then taking that and then leveraging that to say, well, if these are the questions that they need answered in order to make this kind of decision, how do we then create the content that's needed,
Mm-hmm.
and then where are the best places to inject that content and to deliver it to them, because you can't give them all in one shot,
That's
right?
right.
Some of it's going to be on the landing page, some of it's going to be, as you mentioned, in the nurture emails, some of it
Mm-hmm.
is even going to be in the ad, right? So what are the most high level questions, that's kind of top of the funnel,
Mm-hmm.
and then what are the more the deeper questions, the more detailed questions they need answered right before that point of conversion? Those things are going to be deeper in the funnel. So you're really just trying to say, consumer, here's all the information you need. Let's figure out what order we should put that information in a way that makes logical sense for you, so that you're consistently answering each question, we're knocking down each barrier, and eventually we're getting you to the point of conversion. Um,
Yeah.
and we tell people always be testing, right? So
Yes.
there's always an opportunity to say, well, there's a couple of different ways we can look at this. Well, great, let's test it and let's see how people react, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
understand that. And there's different kinds of tests for different kinds of scenarios, whether you're trying to run a sale, whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
longer term campaign, right? There's all kinds of different tools. It's just like building a house. You have to know the right tool for the right job in order to
Yeah.
accomplish the ultimate goal.
Yeah, so if we get a little bit more nuance to it, talking about a specific part of that, what maybe a most critical part, was it the landing page? Is it the the form? Is it what is it? What's maybe the most critical part of it? And then how would you advise on initial testing? Is it okay? You've got the messaging, you've got imagery, you've got the the technical things in place, what would you tell them to think about testing first? Is it copy? Is it, graphics? Is it links to certain places, or how would you direct them?
No, good questions. So I think a lot of times you're going to start. You need a baseline. So you're
Mhm.
just going to start with a lot of times just best practice of
Mhm.
based on whatever information you already have on hand,
Right.
right? And that's going to be your starting point, and then you're just going to change and iterate from that.
Yeah.
In terms of the part that's the most important, that's hard. It's hard to answer because like every part of it's important, right? So again, let's go back to the store analogy real quick. If I go into the store and I can't even find the product I'm looking for,
Mhm.
well, then finding the product is most important.
That's right.
If I can find the product, but then I get to the checkout line and they're all full, and I'm not going to stand in line for 30 minutes to do it, well,
Yeah.
then getting the checkout line shorter is most important, or adding,
Yeah.
self checkout is most important, right? So every point of friction kind of matters. But typically, where we like to kind of focus on at the beginning, if at all possible, is the place closest to conversion. Because essentially that's the lowest hanging fruit. Like those are the people who have gone to the store, gotten the product, put it in their cart or in their hand, like they've gotten in line, like they're ready to buy it, right? Like
Mhm.
you don't even have to convince them. They're, this is what they want.
Mhm.
So how do we make it as easy for them as possible to swipe their credit card and go? Right?
Yeah.
If you're going to have a long line at checkout and someone's just going to say like I don't have time for this and I'm frustrated and I just put it down on the counter and leave the store, well
Mhm.
that's like giving money away because the person
Mhm.
wanted it. So a lot of times when we start testing is we look at those points very close to conversion, those people who really just need to get over that last hump because that's the lowest
Mhm.
hanging fruit. And another reason that's a great place to start is because all points converge there. So
Yes.
whether someone's coming from direct traffic, whether they're coming from organic search, whether they're coming from paid search, a
Mhm.
display ad, an email, whatever the case is, if you can get that friction eliminated, all those channels are going to benefit,
Mhm.
as opposed to maybe focusing on a landing page, which is well, we're just using that for paid search, and that's
Right.
important. But hey, if there's a way to focus on something that benefits all channels,
Mhm.
everything we're doing across the board, well, you're just going to see the return on that investment that much quicker.
Yep, that makes total sense. And I like that idea. It's kind of a good direction to say start at the bottom of the workflow, bottom of the funnel, and work back up because you're going to benefit yourself from your insights gathered all the way back up.
Exactly.
And you might even end up with sort of a scaled, version of the insights that you gain because when you get back to
Mhm.
the all the way back up to the ad, well, now you have all this insight to create new and better ads.
Exactly.
Along the way, though, okay, so what about the technical side of things? What kind of technical potholes can they usually get stuck in when they're trying to build or optimize a campaign?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the fact that when you get from that crossover into this is what we from marketing want to do,
Hmm.
and how do we actually execute against that, right? So if
Hmm.
you're dependent, for example, upon an IT team, you've got a couple of barriers there, right? And
Yeah.
they're not necessarily barriers that are a problem with the IT team in and of themselves. They're just
Hmm.
barriers to maybe just doing business in general. So
Hmm.
first of all, can we effectively and clearly articulate to IT or to whoever your technical team is, this is what we want to happen, right?
Yeah.
Because marketers tend to think one way, technical people tend to think a very different way.
Hmm.
So if you're speaking two different languages, is that translation accurate enough to get across to them what
Yeah.
it is you want to do? So that can be an issue. Technical teams are typically strained, so they can be a bottleneck. So it's like, hey,
Yes.
I want to launch this campaign in a couple of weeks, and they tell you, look, we got a list of things a couple of months long. I can add you to the list. We'll get
Hmm.
to it, right? So there's a lot of bottlenecks there that can happen as well. So it's about saying, how do we work together to be able to make
Hmm.
sure that we understand each other, that we properly prioritize these things for the overall benefit of the business,
Hmm.
and that we have the right tools in place to be able to move with some speed and have some speed to market, right? So if you are, for example, going to be doing some A B testing or some personalization, what are those tool sets that you can have in place that allow you to do that? Do you have those specialized development resources that can help you support those particular tool sets?
Hmm.
That way you can say, number one, okay, this is what we want to do. We can execute this more quickly. But then number two, once we execute it, we have the results. We say, okay, this works better than this. Now you're able to go back to IT and say, hey, IT, we want to make this change because this is going to work better for the business. And
Hmm.
here are the results that show this is going to work better for the business. This is the impact. Well,
Right.
now it's a lot easier for IT to prioritize, right? Now the CIO is in a position where he can say, I should move this up the list because this is going to have a direct impact on our bottom line,
Yeah.
as opposed to I should move this up the list because so and so is complaining about it, and they just happen to be the loudest one, or
Right.
so and so got to their boss first. So the CMO is saying this is more important, or the CRO is saying this is more important. Well, now it's business related. Now we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Now we're
Right.
doing something that's going to affect all of us.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's the thread of business metrics, business results, and prioritizing those is a great place to land. I've found that IT is a bit usually a big bottleneck because they're doing what they do well, and a lot of times it doesn't translate to marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of times, just my own opinion, marketing needs to start to find and build resources and tools that they can bring into marketing that
Mm-hmm.
are owned and controlled by marketing, that are not sanctioned by IT, because it allows marketers to move quicker and test more often without there being the bottlenecks. So I don't know what people's situations are, but I know that's been my experience. There is a big kind of divide in terms of discipline or train of thought when you think about what an IT department or person's there to do and what a marketer's there to do, or really anyone else that's involved with technology. Because the unfortunate truth is that we're all here. Almost every facet of an organization has some form of technology.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really got to come outside of IT and got to be more domain focused. Just my 2 cents to add to that.
No, I think you're 100% right. I mean, I think you have to work with IT as partners to create the right foundation, right? And the right kind of
Yes.
framework for what you're putting in place. But if you have that solid foundation and framework, then it's like, okay, marketing, you use this, you guys
Mm-hmm.
go and do this, and you rock and roll. We're going to do our thing over here, and we'll be able to move forward and faster. And once you have that place of alignment, now everyone's able to accomplish it, not in silos, but in
Mm-hmm.
communication of like, okay, we've set you up for success to do these
Mm-hmm.
things that we know are important to you while allowing us to do things that we know are important to us, but we're all moving in the same direction to keep the business moving forward. What,
Yes.
what sometimes happens, as you kind of alluded to, is that marketing will go off and say, look, I can't wait for IT anymore. I'm going to do my own thing. And they do it in a
Mm-hmm.
vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, because it's technical, IT has to get involved.
Yeah.
But now you've done it behind their back.
Now it's too
And
late.
right. And now they're gonna either messing something up, or they're gonna block you out of spite, or
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
a number of other things are gonna happen because you weren't good partners in saying what was the right foundation and framework that works for
Yeah.
everyone.
Or they have wild success and they look at IT and say, "See, I told you so."
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
No. So let's go back to the customer experience, the customer journey and workflow of a campaign, and maybe you can give us some like kind of current day tips or tactics that you've seen from a content standpoint. So if you're building a campaign, what do you see that's working right now? Is it heavy on images or graphics or videos, or is it having a landing page set up a certain way? What are you seeing that is working?
Yeah. A lot of times the specifics of it depend on the brand and the product, but
Mm-hmm.
some things that are pretty consistent is, messaging is super important.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fallacy that people don't read. People do read.
Oh yeah,
They just read what they want to read. Like they read what
that's
matters
right.
to them, right? So that's super important. And having that symmetry between the messaging on the ad to the messaging that gets delivered after they click on the ad is super important.
Mm-hmm.
The more symmetry we see between that messaging, the better the results typically are. Because you're setting, again, when you see the ad, you're setting an expectation by what that ad says and what it
Mm-hmm.
shows. And if you're able to mirror that expectation when you get to the landing page, it's a sense of reassurance that I've gotten to the right place.
Mm-hmm.
This is talking about the same thing that I was just talking about in the ad. I'm seeing the same imagery that I just saw on the ad. It's a sense of reassurance I'm in the right place. So that's a big one that we see a lot, having that symmetry across ad creative all the way to that entry or landing page creative. Another one we see very often is the importance of having calls to action in the right place. So keeping that ability to take action in a place often above the fold is super important. So people can see where they need to go in order to take that next step.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that call to action to get too buried in the process. And then, as we mentioned before, recognizing that even though you want that person to make that decision and buy all in that one single session, that one visit,
Mm-hmm.
that's not how people often buy,
That's
again,
right.
depending on the product or service. So
Right.
you have to account for that and say, even though my primary call to action may be to add this to my cart, to check out, to purchase, I might need a secondary call to action, like, sign up for our emails to hear more about our products and services,
Hmm.
to learn more about this particular product, whatever the case is, so that you're able to say, well, that's a softer commitment. I'm not ready to hit buy, but
Hmm.
yeah, I'll sign up to get to more information. And now you have a chance to be able to reach out proactively and deliver to them a little bit more content, a little bit more information in chunks, maybe even to test some different things, some different value propositions with a product or
Hmm.
service, and see how they react to those different things. And then see, okay, that's the one that pushed them over the line, and that's the one that got them to actually convert. So leveraging those kind of multiple calls to actions, those primary and secondary calls to action, so that person isn't feeling like they have to make a decision right then and there, or else that's it and they're lost.
Yeah. 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 And, this is where, planning your marketing out and having a longer range, or a broader marketing strategy, it
Mm-hmm.
comes into play, I think,
Yep.
because I think a lot of business leaders who are directing marketing teams, that are external from marketing, but have influence, are they can get caught into this cycle of short term, kind of
Mm-hmm.
ROI and that kind of thing, and they end up putting the market department in a tricky situation where they're chasing their tail.
Yep.
And longer, kind of bigger view, our vision is, and I'm saying this more for marketers to kind of just remember that this is true, and they kind of take this back to those people and remind them, like, we really need to be thinking in terms of the parts the of the buying journey.
Mm-hmm.
We need to think about getting awareness from a certain percentage of the market, and that's all we're going to do is get their awareness.
Yep.
A couple of them might buy, a couple of them might follow, but mostly we're just letting them know. Nurture. Who are the people we're nurturing, and what do we want them to do? You're talking about having two call to actions as a testing point. I think that's good. It's like, well, if they're not buying, then what else could they do?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the bottom of the funnel, starting there, that's a good way, I think, for marketers to appease leadership and say, hey, we're making some quick wins, but since we did this, give us a longer leash to work back up the funnel, and explain to them that we need to do more nurturing so we can have more opportunities to convert. I just think that it can get lost. It can get lost on them, and it can be overwhelming to think that, oh, I have to just constantly be generating sales. And again, depending on product service, you might actually have to be using marketing to generate sales to some degree, but a lot of the times it's not. It's taking a longer view and thinking about what can we create that meets them where they are now.
100%. I think, to your point, you get so short sighted about this next campaign and how it's performing that you forget your ultimate goal here is to drive a relationship and build up
Mm-hmm.
lifetime value.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you get a customer, if you can get them to come back, right, that's
Mm-hmm.
so much cheaper than it is to get someone net new.
That's right.
So there's customer acquisition, which is super important, but there's also customer retention.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the experience really comes into play of, once I've got them and they've transacted, how do I build that relationship? How do I get them to come back? How do
Yeah.
I make it? How do I delight them? How do I make this easier for them? And that's all long-term thinking, right? That's long-term thinking
Yeah.
about, customer profiles and how I'm personalizing the experience now based on what I know about them, what they've told me, what they've looked at, what they've bought in the past, right? So with every interaction, you're able to, again, in the longer term, build more of a personal relationship because you're learning more and more about them,
Mm-hmm.
and you're able to do a better job of saying, I know you're not interested in this. I know you're not interested in this. This is what you're most likely to be interested in. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's exactly what I need. Great. Let's make this next transaction, right? So
Yeah.
thinking about it longer term. And when you're talking to an executive, that's really what you want to hear anyway, because that's what an executive is getting paid and incentivized for.
Mm-hmm.
An executive, especially at a larger organization, is not getting paid on how many sales we made on this campaign that we ran for 4 weeks.
Right.
They're getting paid for, like, how were their earnings this year? What are
Overall
the
value.
earning projections for next year, right?
That's right.
And those are longer term metrics that are going
Yes.
to require things like profitability and lifetime value to be taken into consideration, not just what happened in this 4 week sale.
Such a great point. Yeah, that's such a great point to translate. And you talk about we would talk about mostly about after the click of the ad, and now kind of what you're talking about is after the sale and that experience that happens after the sale. How much do you think about making the after click experience match with the after sale experience?
We think about that a lot, right? Because with every interaction, we want to segment and get down to how close we can get to that person on a one-to-one basis. And sometimes you can get pretty close to one-to-one, especially with
Mhm.
some modern technology and AI and things like that. But you want to keep the overall kind of architecture of the experience relatively consistent so people can
Mhm.
get used to it, right? Like you probably have a local supermarket and you probably know that you go there enough and it's like, I know exactly where the milk is if I need to go grab some milk. I know where the eggs are, right?
Mhm.
There's comfort to that, and
That's
you
right.
want to maintain that comfort. But with the internet,
That's a
we
good
have the
point.
ability to take that comfort to the next level and say, hey, I know Lee likes this brand of eggs.
Mhm.
So it's like the supermarket putting it right at eye level for you every time you
Yeah,
walk into the
it'd be
store,
amazing.
right? And it's just like, I know where the eggs are. Oh, look at
Yeah.
this. Perfect. I don't have to go kind of digging for, do they
Why is
have
that not happening? Why is that
exact?
not happening?
Yeah. Maybe one day. But that's what you can do online, right? You can take that consistent structure, and then
Yeah.
you can position your products and services within that structure to say,
Yep.
here's the next best choice for you based on what we know about you. So we really want to provide that consistency and improve
Mhm.
um, the overall flow of the overall structure. But then we also want to tweak that and say, okay, well, how do we segment that down, and how
Yeah.
do we position things better for new versus returning visitors, or maybe based on geography at a high level, and then as we get to know about you, a frequent customer, a customer of this type of product or service line, and how do we continue to kind of tweak that and play with that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Now you've got me thinking about how my customer experience at the grocery store could be, yes, just the same thing I bought last time, or no, I want to see more options.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, now that I said it, Instacart and those type of
Mm-hmm.
experiences kind of provide a little bit of that,
Yeah,
where you can just kind of click, yeah, what we did last week for the most
exactly.
part.
Mm-hmm.
So you're starting to see a crossover in the physical and the virtual being
Oh yeah.
kind of the same, where a lot of the accoutrements of the virtual world are now being pulled into the physical world. And there's a lot of benefit for that. I think not just I think I like how you think. Let's go old school and think about how do we operate as humans in the
Mm-hmm.
physical world. Now let's translate that to the virtual world, and you're starting to see that full cycle at this point too.
Yeah, it's the exact same psychology, right? I mean, it's the
Yeah,
same brains working the same way. It's
yeah,
just, you're just all you're doing is making a small translation for the medium, but the things that affect you, the things that
yeah,
motivate you, the things that cause you uncertainty are,
mhm,
are all still there. It's the same psychological triggers, and all you're doing is trying to understand how is this psychological trigger, if it's a negative one, manifesting itself in the digital
mhm,
experience, and
mhm.
then how do I remove that, or how do I address it or deal with it so that I'm removing that fear, I'm incentivizing that motivation, right? And I'm moving them in the same direction.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, this has been a great conversation. It's there's a lot here for lots of people in the organization. And I think we've touched on a couple different roles and the way they should be thinking about customer experience, internally and externally with the customer. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having just a great conversation. I love talking about this stuff. I'm passionate about making sure that people get away from thinking that the ad platforms are the answer to all their problems, and and really just kind of investing in the experience that's going to have it's going to lift all the boats, right? It's just the
Yes,
rising tide that's going to lift all the boats.
that's right. Well, yeah, thanks again for being on. If we want to send people your way to get connected with Smart Panda Labs or you directly, where should we send them?
Yeah, they can certainly check us out at smartpandalabs.com, or they can check me out on LinkedIn. They can search by my name. I suspect I'm probably the only Shamir Duverseau on LinkedIn, so
Yes.
I'm pretty easy to find, and certainly get some more insights into how I think and feel about things. And if that jives, they can feel free to reach out.
That's great. Thanks again, Shamir. We'll have to have you back.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it.